Welcome to the only wrestling podcast that covers the WWE developmental system from its inception to modern day. From OVW to MCW to HWA, Deep South, FCW, and much more. Hosted by Brian Asbury and Mortimer Blankenship. Now let's dive into what could have been, what should have been. Welcome to Developmentally Speaking.
Hey, before we get into this episode, can you do us a favor? Will you go ahead and subscribe to the channel?
Will you ring that notification bell?
And if you would, give this video a like. Well, enough of that mumbo jumbo. Let's get to the episode.
Let's talk developmentally speaking, glow up, and connecting through wrestling.
Hey everybody, I'm Morty.
And I'm Brian.
And this is
Developmentally speaking.
Today we have a very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Mr. Cassidy Riley. How's it going?
Very well, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing great.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. We do appreciate it. I know everybody's lives are very busy. Just to take 30 minutes, I know it could be a lot. So thank you.
Hey, it's always a good time getting to relive some memories, especially about my time at OVW, because it was probably one of the best times of my career, honestly.
Awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, we basically do the same thing on almost every one of our interviews. Basically, the first question we start off with is, how'd you get into wrestling? What made you want to do it?
I grew up, in Louisiana. I'm from Louisiana, is where I reside now, and the Mid-South territory was so hot. Bill Watts' Mid-South territory was so hot. I actually spending some time with one of my older cousins, and he had some Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines, and we were just looking through, and I thought, man, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And just so happens that the Mid-South TV came on that night, and so after we had looked through the PWIs that afternoon, we ended up watching the Mid-South television that night, and I was hooked ever since, man. I absolutely loved it. To me, the Mid-South territory was probably some of the best TV, and I'm probably biased because that's what I grew up on. But to me, it was some of the best TV ever put out. And all the great stars came through there. I mean, guys like Jim Duggan, Ted DiBiase, and Terry Taylor, the Rock and Roll Express, and the list is just, it goes on and on. The Freebirds, the Fantastics, the Sheep Herders, just true icons in this business. So it was it was very hot and just captured a young kid like myself.
That's a very unique story, because usually you just hear people talk about, well, I watched it. He knows exactly what happened the day he started watching.
Yeah,
that's amazing to me. That you
I can tell you the picture. I can tell you the picture in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated was a picture of Abdullah the Butcher, and he had a fork and was putting a fork to somebody's head, covered in blood, and he was biting the rope. I mean, it changed my life. That day changed my life forever. It was like there was a connection with my soul with what I was seeing that I'd never felt before, and that was memorable enough for me. I'm 45 years old now. I was 8 years old at the time to remember all these years later.
Wow. People ask me when I started watching wrestling, I'm like, I'm not quite sure. Like, I remember there's a video, it's on a VHS tape, of my family getting together for Thanksgiving, and my grandma recorded one. She rented a video camera to do a video of us at Thanksgiving, and in that I'm sitting on my uncle's lap, and him and my dad are talking about Survivor Series, and I'm talking about how much I like Big Boss Man or something. For sure. I'm like 3 or 4 years old. I'm like, yeah, Big Boss Man. So yeah, I guess that would be
Cobb County, Georgia, man.
Yeah, I think that'd be like my earliest memory of talking about wrestling. But I don't know what got me hooked. I think it's just because my dad watched it, and growing up here being in Seymour, Rip Rogers and Rob Morgan and Von Lilas and Danny Basham. And,
Absolutely. Yeah. You talk about Boss Man, and that's probably one of the coolest things about this whole experience is of my career throughout the years is guys that I grew up watching, I would eventually become friends with. The guys who I idolized, I would share a locker room with them. And, you mentioned Boss Man. Ray was such a great guy, man. So funny. I got to do some loops with him, and we traveled a little bit together, and just a great human being, man. So good in the ring, and even better, if that's possible outside of the ring. He was just a great guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I could relate to that. Like on another channel that I've done previously, there's a video of me driving my old Bonneville with Jimmy Valiant in the passenger seat, just telling stories. And like, look, even I remember sitting there thinking, this isn't real. Like,
yeah,
it's like, what? This is Boogie Woogie Man, handsome Jimmy.
I completely know exactly what you're talking about. What you're speaking about. I was wrestling at the Dallas Sportatorium young in my career. I was privileged enough to get to work there.
That's awesome.
And I remember sitting in the dressing room, and I'm getting dressed, and this big guy comes walking in. He has a baseball hat on. He has on glasses, and I'm a young guy. I'm minding my business, getting dressed, speak, say hi to everybody, and I'm, just trying to keep my head down and not make any waves. And midway through, he laced up one of my boots. I just happened to look over, and by this time, he's got on his gear and all, and it was the one-man gang. And I just remember, like, this is the greatest thing ever, man. I'm sitting in the Dallas Sportatorium. I'm getting dressed. I'm fixing to go out and wrestle. My name was on the marquee outside. And one-man gang's 2 foot away from me. This is the life. This is the life that I want to live.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So, so we know what made you become interested in wrestling. So how did you get your foot in the door for wrestling?
I was always kind of an athlete in high school. I graduated when I was 17. But I knew that I really didn't want to do a typical job. I didn't want to go sit in a cubicle somewhere. And I remember writing a paper in my senior English class saying that I wanted to train to be a professional wrestler. And I remember the teacher called me outside after we turned those in. She's like, is this for real? And I was like, yeah, that's, it's for real. I mean, that's what I want to do. And she was so encouraging, didn't patronize me in any way. So look, I think that's fantastic. If that's what you want to do, you need to follow it,
And so
I ended up meeting some guys who were local down here in the Louisiana scene, and hooked up with them. But they didn't have a ring, so they had showed me all they could outside of having a ring. Well, they introduced me to a man from Mississippi named Lolly Griffin and Ken Massey. And Ken had worked for Mid-South. He was the Red Devil. He was like enhancement talent back then, but just a great hand in the ring. And Lolly and them were doing some TV in Mississippi and Louisiana, Arkansas area, in the Arkansas area. And so I kind of got hooked up with him, and they took me under their wing, and we would drive 4 hours one way on Sunday just to go train in a hot barn with dusty floors that we put a ring up in. And it was incredible. I was happy, man, loving it, loving life. You just get beat up and sore and smiling at the same time because you were doing what you knew you were destined to do.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. The fact that the teacher was so supportive, that, like I said, that gave me goosebumps when you said that, because you don't ever hear that. You hear the opposite quite often. That's a pipe dream. Why would you want to do something like that? But for a teacher to be like, follow your dreams and do that, so many teachers nowadays, they become jaded almost. Because they're taking away tenure. They don't have, they have to make sure they get the right the test scores at the end of the year have to be higher than the test scores at the beginning of the year, or they're going to get canned. And I find that a lot of them are, what they got in the business, got into the teaching world for, is no longer in their soul because of it gets sucked out. But to hear a story of a teacher telling you, hey, that's great, follow your dreams, that's inspiring.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm still in contact with her today. We're still friends on Facebook. I'm friends with her daughter, and she's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, that is awesome.
That's amazing.
That is great. You go ahead.
So you trained, and then how long before the TNA deal came about, and how did you get into TNA back then?
It was probably 7 or 8 years. I had started in Mississippi and then worked my way into Dallas at the Sportatorium. When that kind of ran its course, I came back to Mississippi, and Burt Prentice, who was booking Nashville, had the USA champion Music City Wrestling then, had saw a videotape of me, and so we went up and had a tryout match at one of the NWA shows, and it was horrible. It was the first time I ever came into Nashville. The match was not good, and I just remember coming back through the curtains and just like, man, that totally blew it. The guy I was wrestling got blown up, and it just wasn't a really good match. And I knew for sure it wasn't my best performance. And I found him afterwards, found Burt Prentice, and said, "Hey, man, I apologize. I don't feel like that I was able to put my best foot forward tonight, to no fault of anyone else. But I know I can do better." He said, "Well, don't get dressed. I may have something else for you then." And he threw me out in a tag match with a guy named Eric Harris, and we clicked. I mean, just like we've been tagging together for 20 years. It just flew. And he brought me back the next week, put the tag belts on us, and we just kind of took off. So
Wow.
I'd been a mainstay around Nashville for a while and was probably one of the top baby faces up there when TNA started being formed. Burt had a developmental deal with WCW at the time, so he would send his guys into WCW, and we would do Raw, Nitro, Thunder, and the Saturday night tapings, and then they would send guys from the power plant back on the weekends because we were running 4 or 5 shows a week. They would send guys down to Nashville to get experience, and so that was the trade out they had. So I'd been around WCW for the last year and a half to 2 years that it was open, and had kind of met everybody, Jeff, and all the main players up there. So when TNA started scouting talent, that Jeff and Jerry Jarrett were based out of Nashville, where Mr. Jerry Jarrett would come down to the fairgrounds and watch the matches, and so that's kind of how it happened. Jerry came down, saw Chase and myself tagging, liked it, and ended up signing us.
What was it like? You said you were there the last year or two around WCW. What was it? Was it as bad as everyone? From your perspective, could you see the writing on the wall?
Man, I mean, I was like the low man on the totem pole, but I was just happy to be there, and we were making really good money. We were getting it. I can't remember, it was either $500 or $750 a night. So from a kid that was a starving artist in the wrestling business for a couple of years, pretty much, to making that kind of money, man, you didn't look at anything. You were just happy and smiling all the way, and if they told you to be there, you showed up. Yeah, man, you were baby facing like there wasn't no tomorrow. Thumbs up and smiles, and you were shaking hands, and hey, whatever you needed to do, because you were finally putting some money in the bank, and it was nice, and you saw the potential financial side that you can make a really good living doing this. So for me, that was the first time I ever saw it. So it was fantastic. I was flying all around the country. I remember we were in Baltimore like the night after the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl one year. We were in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. We were at South Padre Island for spring break. So, I mean, if there was a party going on, we were somewhere close by pretty soon and making good money. But what else do you want to do? It's a great life.
That sounds great. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
So when you got to TNA, you were there for a couple years before the developmental deal came about. How would you describe your TNA run?
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I really did. There were aspects of it that I wish could have been done a little bit better. But a part of that, man, is learning and growing through the business. Some of it, was probably on me. Some of it because they were so heavy and invested in so many talents. It's hard to get TV time when you got that many people on the roster. And then they were bringing in big name stars to try to draw audiences. And so, of course, those guys are going to take TV time away from everybody else. But I was fortunate, man. I got to tag and do some stuff with Raven, tag and do some stuff with Dustin Rhodes. Me and Chase had, a good run for a little while. He would go on to tag with Andy Douglas as the Naturals. They had a great run, even had the tag belts a couple of times. So it was fun. And it was, again, you're around guys who are so good that it's hard not to pick up some stuff and become better just through osmosis.
That's awesome.
Agreed. So how did you get approached for the developmental deal?
So what happened was Dusty Rhodes was the booker at TNA.
Uh-huh.
there was I'm not sure exactly all the politics of it. Dusty ended up leaving TNA. My contract was coming up, and I was kind of labeled as one of Dusty's guys, and so I really wasn't being
Definitely not a
figured
bad
into the
thing.
mix because the new booker coming in, who was Scott D'Amore, wanted to go a different direction than what Dusty was doing, and that's what he was brought in to do. You know, obviously they wasn't happy with the company, so you have to make changes, and when that happens, you know, situations occur. So after that, Dusty left, went to WWE. Scott took over the book, and at my time there, it just kind of ran out by then. It was up. They didn't have any future plans for me. Offered me a deal I didn't want to re-sign. There was very few dates and limited money. So I decided not to sign it. Called Dusty. He had gone back to work for WWE, and you know, he's the one that brought me in and got me my tryout, and eventually got me signed with WWE.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And being a
So
Dusty
yeah,
guy
I
is
was
not a
training
bad
a lot,
thing.
man. I love Dusty. I think he's just an incredible guy. And what he's done for me in my career, I will never be able to repay him for. You know, I love Dusty, and I'm so proud of Cody and the push that he's getting and the levels he's reaching right now. You know, it's so I love those guys.
Absolutely.
So you get to the developmental, you get to OVW, then you're surrounded by like Danny Davis, Jim Cornette, Rip Rogers. How was it like? Rip, what was your first impression of Rip? So
So when I got there, Jim was already gone.
Okay.
It was Danny and Al,
Oh, yeah.
and then Robert Gibson was one of the trainers then, and Rip was doing
Robert was
the,
a trainer? I had
yeah,
no idea.
Bill
I had
Gibson
no
was-
idea about that.
a lot changed when Jim was gone.
Yeah,
Robert Gibson was a
Robert
trainer?
Gibson was
Yeah.
one of the
Wow,
trainers.
I never knew that.
Sure was. And Rip was doing the beginners class, and so I didn't get a lot of time with Rip. We would see each other at the building, and on days when we were leaving from training, they would be coming in afterwards. And I came down and did one of their TVs one time because they had a guy that was coming in for a tryout. Christian York was coming in for a tryout for developmental. So Casey and I went down to one of the beginner TVs, or whatever, however they were referred to, and worked with Christian and Johnny Jeter. And so I got to spend a little time with Rip through there, but not as much as I'd like, but plenty enough to know the kind of guy he is you know, his reputation far precedes him as an excellent trainer. And the guy's just, he's just funny. He's just an hilarious individual, and you never know what's going to come out of his mouth.
Oh, we took him to there was a wrestling convention in Indianapolis called the Squared Circle Expo, and we took him, and Von Lila showed up, and it's Rip doesn't really give a shit who's around. He's gonna say what he's gonna
At all.
say, and he's walking up to people with lines and just saying stuff, and
like they had there would be people who have lines, you know, the whole convention center like long, and he would just skip the entire line, walk up to him, and there was who was it? It was Deanna. Yeah, and I'm not going to say the word that it was Deanna and who else?
Rebel.
And Rebel were sitting at a table together, and he walks up behind him and says, "How's it going, ya?" And
The fans were just like,
the fans go, "Did he just say that to them?"
Then there's Von Lilas. He's like, Rip, you can't say that.
You can't say that, bud.
But he doesn't care. He
No,
can.
no,
He can get away
and,
with it.
and they looked at him and says, "Oh, Rip, you know you're the only one that can call us that."
Of course.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was awesome. But yeah,
But man, I loved it. I remember when I first moved to Louisville, I had left Louisiana and it was like 80 degrees, and I get to Louisville and it's snowing. And I'm just like, man, I'm in for a culture shock. It was, but it was such a good time. You know, the class of guys that we had when I was there was just, I mean, the talent was off the charts. Paul Burchill and Jeter and Cage. And, Roadkill was there, Mike Krul, Casey and I, the Major Brothers. You know, I was there when Deep South shut down, and they would send all the guys eventually that were down in Atlanta from the developmental territory up to OVW before they would open up in Florida. So I was there during that whole transition, and the talent was just thick. And man, we had good shows and just a great locker room. And I'll never forget, Casey and I were tagging, and I probably already had the belts either once or twice, the tag belts once or twice. And the first night those guys came in, they showed up at the building on a Friday night, and the Major brothers walked in, and I just remember Casey telling them, "Hey, Majors, there's only room for one brothers tag team around here." And like they didn't know if he was shooting or working. It was just so funny. And I just sit over there and just laughing because it was obvious we were going to take off and go into a feud with those guys. But man, it was just fun. It was a fun locker room. I remember when Drew Gallows was doing Festus and he was tagging with Ray Gordy, and we were doing a show, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but who was it that was somebody was hurt and was sitting. It was Ace Steel. Ace Steel had hurt his knee, so Ace was out from working for a couple of weeks, and he was sitting out in the crowd. And Festus told him, he's like, "No, so we'll do the thing, we're gonna go through the crowd on our entrance and all. Ray's gonna be trying to act like he's trying to control me, and I'm just going crazy." He's like, "So if I see you, we may have a little interaction." Ace is like, "All right, that's fine." So Ace goes and he grabs a hot dog and he sits down. Well, here comes Jesse and Festus. Drew Festus is walking through and he sees Ace, so he starts making his way through the crowd, through the chairs, and he walks over there and he sees Ace has got a hot dog, so he rips the hot dog out of Ace's hand and he just eats half of it in one bite and just swallows it, right? Well, about that time, you can just see him just start spitting everywhere. And like, "Puh, puh, puh." Ace had went and got that hot dog, but he had filled it full of jalapeno.
Oh, we lost him there for a second. Oh, jalapenos, I think is what I was going to say. No, it's not on it. See?
Oh, there you go.
There you go, you're back.
Sorry.
We heard that it was
sorry.
jalapenos.
So Drew's going through the crowd.
Yeah.
Do you want me to just pick up where we left off?
Yeah, it's great. You're fine.
Yeah. So Festus is going through the crowd and he sees Ace. He grabs the hot dog, bites half of it, and just like 2 or 3 seconds later, he just starts spitting. Well, Ace had took the hot dog because he knew Drew was going to come through, Festus was going to come through, and he had filled it full of jalapenos. It was jalapenos all on a hot dog bun, and he ate half of it. So he got a mouthful of jalapenos, man. Just stuff like that, that I'll take with me forever. We just had such a good time in a good locker room, and just stories I could, sometimes I forget about. It's hard to remember them all, and you'll just pop one in your head and just start laughing because it was just good memories. It was good times.
Yeah. You said the name Roadkill. I forgot. Like early on in my career, I worked with Roadkill. Like probably for 4 months. He was in Supreme. Super nice dude.
But he
Great guy, man. Great guy. I always enjoyed being around Roadkill. He could be a little ornery sometimes, but he had a heart of gold. I remember one time something had happened to my vehicle, and he came and pulled me with a chain and helped me get it to the mechanic shop.
Awesome.
Just a good guy, man. Just a good guy.
Sure. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, you spent some time there in OVW, and about how long were you there for?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And we've already kind of touched on this, but do you have any other stories from OVW? Because we're always looking for OVW stories, just because, like we always tell everybody, OVW was our wrestling when we were kids. Like, being from Seymour, if we were to go watch a show live, it was going to be OVW. And
Yeah.
A lot of people.
I just remember the first time I got to the Davis Arena, just the nostalgia that was encompassed in that building. You could just kind of feel it. Guys like Cena and Orton and Batista and all that come through there, and it just made so many stars. So you kind of knew you were on sacred ground, and Danny was a guy that was held in the utmost respect by everybody. And they were just putting out. Al was the same way. Al was probably one of the best trainers and one of the best minds in this business that I have ever met in my life. Al Snow does not get enough credit for what he has given to the business of professional wrestling. I'll be the first one to tell you that. I think the guy is a genius when it comes to being able to communicate and teach our business. I'm not sure if there's anybody that's better than Hal. But man, I mean, we just had a good time. We would all get together. I remember going to the Derby one year. We all got together.
That's cool.
You know, had some drinks and went to the Derby, and it had been raining for like 3 days before that, and so that we all went in the infield, and it was just a muddy mess. And so by the end of the day, by the main race, we had been having a good time all day. We had went through and left in the infield and made our way down through the stands and was down right at the finish line with probably $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 seats, and here we are, a bunch of hoodlums, muddy from knees down, shit-faced, drunk. But nobody was going to say anything to us because we were bigger than everybody anybody around. So who's going to say anything to us? I remember an ODB's car got stolen that day. It was just. There's just a ton of memories. We just had a good time. We had a good locker room. Everybody that was there was, a good sport and just wanted to work and be better. Mm-hmm. Like I said, they closed Deep South down, so you had guys like Jay Bradley and the Majors. I'm trying to remember who else came up from Deep South. Angel Williams was there for just a little bit. But just a good group of people, man. Just a good locker room.
We're actually going to have Jay on this show as well. So.
Yeah, Jay's a good guy, man. I enjoyed. We got to work together some. I always had good matches with him. We always had good chemistry in and out of the ring, and he's another one of those guys that, man, I just think a lot of, and he's still pounding away to this day. He's on NWA and doing good. And I just love seeing guys being successful. Like I said, I'm 45 right now. I'll be 46 this year. I have probably 6 or 8 more matches that I've committed to, and I'm probably going to hang it up as far as in-ring stuff goes sometime first part of next year, so we'll see how it goes. So it does me good, man, to see guys like him still out there hustling, still out there getting bookings and doing what they love.
Absolutely.
That's the whole purpose of this podcast is so we did grow up, with OVW, and, outside of, that Kentuckiana area, nobody knew what OVW or like Deep South. If you're not in the area, you never knew, the magic that happened, the people. And I just didn't think it was fair that anytime anybody mentions OVW or Developmental, it's just the big four. So we wanted to interview everybody because everybody made an impact. Everybody left their mark, I'd like to thank you for everything you've done. We watched you growing up, and we enjoyed every minute of it. And a lot of you guys don't
that
get
means
the credit.
I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
You don't get the credit you guys deserve, but you all had a hand in it.
Well, thank you very much. Like I said, man, it was just such a fun place to be. It's just such a great atmosphere. I'd go back and do it all over again. If my body would still hold up to where I was at the age I was when I was there, I would go back and do it all over again. It was just a blast. And the amount of knowledge that I was able to learn there and take away of the wrestling business in whole, not only in-ring work, but production stuff. I mean, it encompasses every aspect of a professional wrestling TV show can be taught or was being taught at the Davis Arena if you were smart enough to pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. They might, Danny's in there cutting, editing tape. He would stay there all night after we shot TV on Wednesday, and you'd come back in for class Thursday morning. I got my dates right. I think we shot on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. But anyway, you'd come back in for class the next day, and Danny would have been there all night editing TV. That's just how committed everybody was. It was just a great place and a great atmosphere. And if you accepted it, it would accept you. And if you put the work in, it would show you the love back.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's today's episode. I want to thank you so much.
Is there anything you need?
Yeah, that's what I say. Is there anything that you need to plug or anything that you would like to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, just thank you guys for having me. Thank you for giving me a chance to tell a little bit of my story.
Absolutely.
Keep my name out there. I'm still active as of right now in the independent. So if anybody's interested in booking me, you can reach out to me at on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the good social media sites. I'm not a hard guy to find if you're serious about wanting to do some work. Reach out to me. I'm working for a company called Bayou Independent Wrestling down here in Louisiana, and it's going great. Our next show is July the 9th in West Monroe, Louisiana. So we've been selling out houses, and last show we had to turn people away, and we expect it again. We've built up a really good little company out here. Josh Newell's the promoter, and it's doing really good. So if you're down in our area, please come check out Bayou Independent Wrestling. If you see us on the marquee, you won't be disappointed. And also, I just want to say thanks to Danny and Al and Robert Gibson and all the guys that are from up in OVW for just such a wonderful time in my career, wonderful time in my life, and everybody who I got to share the locker room with. It was an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could, stick around after we cut this. I have a few things I'd like to talk to you about. Cool. All right.
Sure.
I'm going to cut that part out.
Okay.
So, absolutely. Thank you so much again. This has been today's episode. I'm Mortimer Blankenship.
And I'm Brian.
Thank you so much, sir, for being here. We'll see you later.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, everybody, it's Morty.
It's Brian.
And thank you for watching today's episode of Developmentally Speaking.
If you could, please click that subscribe button.
And don't forget to punch that bell icon so you can get notified whenever we go live or drop a new video every Monday. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next
Developmentally Speaking.